I have the amazing Joanne Kinya Baker joining me from Shades of Humanity. Joanne immigrated from Kenya over 10 years ago after working with refugee camps. She is trained as a social worker, is an adjunct prof, and has her own company. She is absolutely passionate about anti racism, coffee, and hot sauce. Welcome, Joanne.
Thank you so much, Tina. I love that introduction.
And I'm you could join me. So we actually met. I had keynoted actually in Chestermere, and no, was it no? It was Airdrie.
Airdrie,
I
the first
keynoted.
time.
Yeah, I keynoted in Airdrie. With what is unconscious bias, and we've actually kept in touch ever since, which is the beauty. I love meeting people at the events that I speak at, and you're just amazing, beautiful inside and out. You had commented actually on a video that I just did all about microaggressions, and you had commented on LinkedIn, and I was like, I'm going to follow up with Joanne. So I had a question for you. I want you to describe what are the three types of microaggressions in your words.
Yeah, absolutely. So the three types of microaggressions were coined by a psychologist, where she was able to categorize how we experience microaggressions in our daily lives and how it shows up in our conversations and interactions with people. And so the three types are micro insults, micro assaults, and micro invalidations. So basically, the most common one I would say would probably be the micro assault, where someone intentionally behaves in a discriminating way. And they're not intending to be offensive, but they are actually. So they'll crack a racist joke and just say, I was just joking. They will make a comment about how a person drives. And I know you've talked about this a lot, Tina, and go like, oh, actually, no, I was just joking, right? And relating that to the race of a person. So that's in a form of a micro assault. And a micro insult is, it's a comment or an action that unintentionally discriminate and is unintentional and discriminatory. Bit of a mouthful for my tongue today. But
Okay,
so an
that's okay.
example, this is an example, Tina, that you might kind of also connect to or relate to, would be saying to an Indian doctor, your people must be so proud, right?
Oh,
Or like myself in the education arena as an African, I get, oh wow, you must really be a shining example for the African community. That is a micro insult. And then there's a micro invalidation. So this is when your comment invalidates or undermines the experience of a certain group of people. So an example of a microinvalidation would be, for instance, a white person telling a Black person that, oh, racism doesn't exist in today's society, or racism does not exist in Canada. That is an American problem. So you're
wow.
invalidating my experience, right, as a person of color who experiences racism. And the effect of that is that I won't be able to show up in a way that I can authentically because you don't think that my experience is valid. Yeah.
Beautiful, beautiful descriptions of all of those. I would love for you to describe. I have no doubts you've had many microaggressions over your lifetime and probably examples of all three. What is the one that probably irks you the most, or the one that you have received the most often?
Well, the one I've received the most often is actually more like a physical microaggression where someone wants to touch my hair, right? And sometimes even goes ahead to do it as they are asking. And I had an example when I was in an elevator in Edmonton at an event, and I'm standing there doing my own thing, minding my business, and with my husband. And this woman just kind of just right next to me walks up to me and says, can I touch your hair? But as she said it, she already had a whole bunch of my braids in her hair. And she's like, it's so different. And I'm like, well, my husband was just like surprised, but was able to also just kind of call her out on it.
How did
Um,
he do that? How did he call her out? I'm so curious.
he was just like, can she touch your bald husband's head? Like literally what he said. And she was just
Maybe
like,
I shouldn't have
no.
asked. Maybe I shouldn't have. It's so true, because I always call it flip it and test it. Flip it and
Flip it
test
and
it.
test it. Yes, absolutely. And I really, really like the flip it and test it thing from your keynote. And I use that a lot.
Yeah.
And another example is still with hair. When I don't have braids and I have my afro on, I had a roommate who once touched my hair and said, it feels like sheep's wool. And I don't know whether she was trying to like, I don't even know what type of bias that was or
Right.
what exactly was going through her head. But, you know, I want to say too that the hair thing is a very sore spot for a lot of Black women. It's a conversation that we're constantly having, and it really has a very negative impact for historical reasons. You know, just let us be.
Can you elaborate a little bit about that? Because I don't think a lot of people would know the historical reasons. So please do
Yeah.
elaborate a little, educate us.
Well, I mean, historically, our hair has been dictated upon how we should show up, right? How the closer our hair looks to the idea and concept of whiteness, the better it is.
Right.
And I remember as a kid growing up straightening my hair because I just had this really negative reaction towards my kinky hair because of the messages that I would receive. And this is me growing up in an environment where everybody looks like me.
Right.
And even fast forward to today, where there's actually workplaces that don't allow women to have their afro hair out or to have women with dreadlocks, schools that don't allow kids to go to school with dreadlocks or braided hair. And so it's a very touchy thing for a lot of Black people because it really does tie back into colonization and what beauty bias and affinity bias as well in how we show up, really.
Yes.
Yeah.
And I have to admit, I find this hard, to be honest, to hear. Like, I feel myself getting a little choky. Yeah, I'm starting to tear up a little bit. So anyways, composure, Tina. I feel it's a lot to do with internal bias, because when you have been told by society that something isn't right or that it's somehow different, now you start to internalize it so that your authentic beauty now isn't even acceptable by yourself.
Yeah.
So that can be very damaging.
Absolutely. It is. It's damaging. It's discouraging. I often wonder what message we are sending out to our children as well, because for so long we've had to conform to be able to fit in. So that conformity bias really hits hard, especially around hair and women's Black hair. And there's so many documentaries and articles that just really talk about the sensitivity of Black people's hair and how it really does tie back into white supremacy.
Yeah, absolutely. I could talk to you for 7 hours. I'd like to just drive with you, like from Calgary to Saskatoon. That's 7 hours. And then come back.
Can we maybe go the other way?
Well, because I was trying to think, like, I could just talk to you forever. You're just a wealth of knowledge and beauty. And I really I pray that you just authentically show up in everything that you do. You're a gift to the world. And thank you so much for doing this with me. You're a joy.
Thank you so much. I'm happy to be a part of this conversation. I think we need to continue to have this conversation.
Yeah, I agree.
And I'll caution too that people need to also just kind of get into their own research and not necessarily rely on the experiences of people who are facing microaggressions to get the education.
Right.
You know what I mean? Yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
We have to do a part 2, girl. We're going to have to do a part 2.
I think so.
Thank you so much for joining me, Joanne. Love you to bits.
Time with Tina, she'll get you to speak, and all your dirty secrets will leak. Hey, interviewee, you'll surely see there's nothing like Time with Tina.